I put cloud in quotes because I don't like that word. I think it's well used, and it means damn near anything you want it to be. However, it's what marketing puts, so what marketing puts is what we'll do. And we'll walk through that. I'm basically going to show you some strategic direction where we're headed with cloud, what it means to us. There's really 3 or 4 topics I want to cover. The first one is obviously networking, what we're doing there. That's only going to be a couple slides. I want to show you what we're doing with OpenStack, a couple slides. I want to show you what we're doing with linking all this stuff together. It's a couple slides. And then I want to show you this stuff in action and actually show you how we operate our IT organization and how you can too, leveraging everything I just showed you. I got to do all that in 45 minutes. So it's going to be very brief. If you want to dive deeper, I'm going to be over at the Cisco booth for a while. Our Cisco guys know about this stuff, and we can talk in depth as much as you want. But it's a fascinating area that we're stepping into as a company. You can see Cisco starting to put lots and lots of cash into these technologies if you haven't already. So we'll start off with just kind of where we see clouds being. And I struggle with some of this stuff because I see a lot of people saying, well, everybody's going to AWS. Well, I think AWS has got a good product, right? Or everybody's going to vCloud, or everybody's going to, or you're going to all run private cloud. I just don't believe it, right? And if you've been in IT long enough, you know that we never do just one thing. It's often a hybrid approach. Tell me, is anybody 100% virtualized? Really? 95, 800. In Cisco is definitely not 100% virtualized. We've got 4,000 ESX servers, right? Something like that. Maybe it's upwards of 6,000 ESX servers. Now we're moving all those to OpenStack as much as we can to cut down on VMware licensing. And by the way, VMware's got a great product. I think we're all going to have VMware for a long time. I think it's going to move into more of a hybrid environment. I'll talk a little bit about that as we step through this. You've got your private clouds that are out there. A private cloud, in my mind, could just be a cluster of servers. You could argue VMware running vCenter as a private cloud, right? I go in, I provision, I can move workloads around, and off we go. It all depends on how you define it. Where we're going with private cloud, as you're starting to look at, it's no longer about the configuration, the maintenance, the firmware. It's more about running the service and running policies. Cisco as a corporation is moving more and more to a policy model, from service profiles and UCS to ACI, which I'll talk about, all the way to what we're doing with OpenStack and what we're doing with private clouds along that mantra. We think that everything's going to be a hybrid. You're going to have AWS, you're going to have Azure, you're going to have Google, you're going to have NWN, you're going to have, all these guys will have their own clouds. And has anybody been to a cloud broker where you can actually go down and see the different pricing between all the different clouds based on workloads? If not, you should, right? Go and say, okay, and there's a couple of websites, I should have put them up here. There's a couple of cloud brokers that say, okay, what's your workload? It's Exchange. It's got how many users. And here's the pricing of all the different cloud providers that are out there. What's interesting is that in that case, maybe AWS wins. But then I flip it to, I want to do SQL, and maybe Azure wins, right, from a price perspective. So it's not going to be just one. And if you just one public cloud, I think you're locking yourself in. You want that flexibility to move around. Us in public sector, I think have a little bit more requirements on how and where we can send stuff. Can we base our cloud in China? Probably not going to go over so well with our constituents, right? So there's a lot of things to think about in public sector that our commercial brethren don't have to think about. Right? I've got a commercial buddy who's they've got everything in Amazon, and we're moving everything to AWS. Look how much money we're going to save. And because of the workloads, they're going to write a check for $250,000 every month. So their IT budget was about $2 million, and now their IT budget just went up to $4 million. For the exact same services, right? So there are times it works, there are times it doesn't. That's why we really think the industry is moving to a hybrid cloud. And this is internal, what do you have? Some of this are some marketing terms that I don't like, some of these are actually pretty dang good. I see this, and I'll sum this up for you. I see you're going to have VMware or Hyper-V, something along those lines for your traditional models. The guys that you've just got your standard VMs that you've got to have running. You will have requests for what we're calling agile IT. Agile meaning you need a VM spooled up in 5 minutes or they go to AWS, right? And if you lose control of that, if you have a special way to get to AWS, which I'll show you in just a little bit, that's not as big of a deal. But if they're going out to AWS, you hear a lot of vendors call this shadow IT, and I think that's another term that's starting to get a little long in the tooth. But in Cisco, we found that we were losing 20 to 30% of the IT budget off the corporate Amex as people went out because IT couldn't react fast enough. And that's where the agile part comes in. What we actually discovered is that it's IT Like, imagine if you want to go out and start a business right now. I can go onto the web and build a business faster than I can be in my own IT organization. I can get servers, I can get email, I can basically buy everything with my credit card in 30 minutes. And I can maybe even have my company incorporated, I don't know, right? But I can do that faster than I can use my own IT organization, and that's a problem. And that's why people avoid IT. And so we're using a lot of these techniques to get around that. So agile IT is very important to us as an IT organization and as an IT industry. But we still have the traditional stuff that's going to be there. I don't think VMware's going away anytime soon. And you see Cisco versus VMware, or big, head-to-head, we're supposed to be fighting. Whatever. I don't see that. I don't see that happening. I see our IT organizations using both our products together, and oftentimes they complement it when some of the executives up there are saying they should be competing. Right, so as we move forward, and I'll walk through some of that as we go, I want you to remember traditional versus agile. I'm going to lean more and more towards the agile in this conversation. And if you've got questions, by the way, stop me and ask as we go through this. Some examples, just so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about when I talk about traditional. You can go down, you can read, right? You can see what I'm talking about. Here's the thing I want you to remember. When I'm talking about agile IT, right, we're talking about where you may have a single app running lots of servers, lots of little servers. Flip it back, if you're running SAP, you've probably got a server that's running lots of different apps on it. Right? So it's kind of an inverted way of looking at how web tiers are developed, all those kinds of stuff. You'll see us actually coming out with hardware that mirrors this, right? We've actually got a cartridge compute system that's all virtualized, and it's just about lots of little processors, lots and lots of chips that mirror what you're trying to do on these applications on the right. You get the guys that are doing, you look at like a Google, if they have a failure of hardware, do you think they replace it? The answer is no. It sits dead in the rack until they go to replace the next hardware refresh in a couple of years, right? And that's their concept of them using this kind of thing where the app knows what's out there. If you lose one, it flips to another. It's like the joke goes, it's cattle, right? This agile IT is about cattle. You lose cattle, you shoot one, you'll get another. Whereas in a traditional IT, it's like a pet. Right? If you lose that VM or it's getting sick, you're going to the vet and trying to fix that virtual machine and get it back up and running because it's that important to you. Right? It's two different ways of looking at IT. Us in public sector, I think we right now are over on the left side quite a bit. Our users are going to start pulling more and more over here. It's because the constituents are using stuff like Google. They're used to those concepts and know it. Wow. We can party in here too if we want, but I figure we're talking more about agile IT. So I think our users are going to be pulling us in that direction. Am I expecting you to roll out Google? No. I don't think you'll see that. Maybe at the state level you'll see some kinds of this, but at a state level they may actually just outsource it. Because the question is, do you have the talent base to deal with that kind of thing? So it's, as IT, we're changing, and that's good. It's good to be changing. I thought this was interesting, right? So you know those guys on the left. You look at Salesforce, we use Salesforce, a lot of people use them. They're a great example of a cloud vendor. You look at AWS, another great example of a cloud vendor, different ways of doing different things. You've got NetSuite up there, you've got Oracle. Everybody's hopping into this cloud thing. It's really about just providing a service, providing an application. It all comes on the application. IT, in my opinion, we exist for the application. And that's the only thing we're there for, to connect people to the application. Well, here's what I found interesting. This hybrid cloud approach, they're predicting most of the market's going to start adopting it. And the stat that I found fascinating is that AWS and VMware have the exact same revenue right now. And so you think about that. Each one's the exact same. AWS is growing 50% year over year. VMware is growing 10 to 14, which is still respectable, don't get me wrong. But you look at what's happening in the industry, it didn't even occur to me. They're talking about spinning AWS out as its own company at this point because it's making so much cash. It's actually getting away from, I think, the foundation what Amazon really wanted to head towards. But you start reading through some of this stuff, it's interesting what's going to be happening. So let's talk through what's going to be happening. So as a Cisco guy, obviously I love networks, right? Networks are the foundation of what we do. The problem is networks have been static. Networks are slow, not from a throughput, but from the ability to change. So users want to roll out Oracle. How long does it take us to do that on the network side? If they said, hey, I need you to build a new network, it needs to be secure, it needs to have all these components, I need you to connect all this stuff together, no, whoa, hold on, right? It's going to take some time for me to build that out and test that. I think we relate to the SDN party. However, that SDN party is just getting started. If you look at what's happening in the market, OpenFlow, I see it at my universities, is kind of starting to fade away a little bit. And these more networks that are oriented around being very, very application oriented are starting to come online. We call this ACI, application-centric infrastructure. You've probably heard it thrown out there, it's next generation data center networks. The reason you hear me talking about networks in a cloud conversation is because if you're going to run an internal cloud, you can't have a bottleneck that's going to slow you down. If I've got a cloud over here, and I'll talk about what this over here is in a minute, and I've got AWS and I'm linked to it here or Azure, but the network is stopping me from being very adaptive to my constituents and what they want from an IT organization, right? That's a problem. So we have developed switches that integrate software-defined networking with the hardware itself. For those that haven't seen it, it's called the Nexus 9000 platform. It revolves around this, data growth and flexibility of the network. We're making 40 gig as cheap as 10, which is now as cheap as 1 or even less than that. Right? You start looking at what's happening with density. I mean, how many, I see my servers going out the door today have a ½ terabyte of RAM on them for VMware. Right? Is that common what you guys are seeing too? You will be, I promise that, right? 32 gig DIMMs are cheap as dual 16s now, so everybody's doing 512 gig, 24 to 28 cores on a blade. So if you start stepping that back, how many virtual desktops can you get on there? How many VMs can you get on there? Today we're memory bound. The cores are not the problem, it's memory. Right? So I've actually got a couple servers going out the door, tomorrow they have 3 terabytes of RAM each. Right? And they'll scale to 6 when 64 gig DIMMs come out. Well, imagine when I consolidate that down, the amount of bandwidth that comes out of that, and my IT organizations, my app developers say, I want to move quicker, I need my application up faster. Well, that's a lot of bandwidth coming through, so 40 gig will become the new 10, I promise you that. 100 gig is here, terabit Ethernet is just around the corner. 2 years out, terabit Ethernet, you'll have probably an 8-port terabit card, line rate, non-blocking. Imagine the buffers on that one, right? But I'd love that for a house, terabit connection. I see it happening anytime soon. That would be pretty cool. We see a lot of stuff happening. Network refresh. We just can't rely on static hardware in order to make our IT organization operate like a cloud organization. So Cisco is going in and saying, you may have actually seen this before, right? UCS. How many of you UCS customers out here? A few, right? UCS. The premise of UCS was this on the left, right? Virtualization was in its starting to hit its heyday, really coming along. The hardware wasn't matching it. So we developed UCS. You guys know the story, right? Everything 100% virtualized. I'm not going to get into a UCS story here. If you want to talk UCS, and I love talking UCS, come find me over at the Cisco booth, and we can talk for hours. But we took a look at it and we said, okay, we need to be ready for when cloud hits. But it's not here today. So then the next thing they said, okay, well, what about the network? The network, SDN was showing up because the network wasn't flexible. So we created what's called ACI. It's actually built by the same people that invented UCS. If you know the names MPLS, Mario Prem, Luca, and Sony, are the people that we basically fund to go out and create these things and come back in, and they make a lot of money, and we get a product, right? ACI is essentially the same kind of thing, a very flexible environment where we don't build networks on config T, we build networks on policy. When I build networks on policy and drop down policy, I can plug in my cloud, I can plug in my VMware, and I need to provision a new policy. Maybe I want to do a DMZ where I can build out apps in my test dev. I don't want to buy more hardware because the public sector is, I don't know about you guys, but I see budgets are not always going through the roof. If anything, they're always coming down, right? And so if I can create a test dev environment on the exact same hardware, and when that VM is built up and running, I can provision it straight into production on the same hardware, but I've isolated those two. I've got two separate worlds running together. That's what we're doing, right? Everything about UCS, service profiles, that concept, take that and just extend it broader into the network. I can spool up and spool down applications. I can spool down application profiles, that's what we call it. Somebody like a Citrix, an EMC, and NetApp are writing into the open API. So you see I've got northbound, southbound, physical, virtual. I can look at all the nerd details we want. The point being that Cisco's investing heavily in hardware. It's highly adaptive, very quick to deploy, no bottleneck on bandwidth, and it should, I mean, I shouldn't say this if we're being recorded, so just ignore I said this, right? But it's about 40% cheaper than a traditional Cisco network. Part of the reason for that is we're adopting merchant silicon in addition to our silicon. It's all about focusing on agile IT. We've got to be quicker in our industry. Oh, and here's a snapshot. For some nerd news, this is what that is, right? Switches on the left, lots of different switches, 40 gig, 100 gig, 10 gig ports, cheap, cheap, cheap. Right? Not to sound like a used car salesman, but it's very inexpensive to leverage this technology today. The difficult part is changing the organizational mindset as to how do I use this, because in the middle is the controller, right? So in the controller is where everything's done. You can no longer command line into your network. I mean, actually you can. There's just not much you can do. You can just do show mod, show ver, show all this other stuff. Right? But as I go in, I'm now defining policy for the organization. So I can define a security policy. By the way, this is the most secure network in the world because everything is deny all by default, just like a firewall. And we actually made an acquisition. Embrain, I believe it was, about 2 months ago. All security guys are going to be writing directly into the code for the switches themselves and integrate security directly in. Because in a cloud world, I don't have time to sit down and figure out what are all my firewall policies going to be, or what are my ACLs going to be. We're going to define policies at an organizational level, how applications interact together, how users can do it. So, that's that. OpenStack, anybody running OpenStack today? Yeah, I didn't think so, right? OpenStack is not easy. You're going to hear OpenStack more and more. In fact, I think it was dying on the vine until a couple vendors, I think, was it Google, Cisco, a couple others jumped in the OpenStack ship about 2 years ago or so. I have to go back and look in the exact times. What is OpenStack, right? It's not simple because it's basically Linux for a cloud. Imagine a cloud made out of like 10 different Linux modules. Each one is independent of each other. And if you upgrade one, it may impact the other. It's like upgrading an entire network on your own. All the dependencies of all the different components of the network. If I upgrade my core switches and then my servers and my storage and things don't match, right? It works. It works very well. It works well in an organization where I've got a lot of IT folks that can focus on that kind of thing. We've got 16 people worldwide that run our OpenStack cluster. And there's a reason why we only need 16 people serving 70,000. And I can't remember how many actual VMs we have. It's somewhere upwards of 100,000 virtual machines, somewhere like that, maybe even higher at this point. But we only need 16 guys to run this. Most of them are setting policy, back to the policy idea. Right? OpenStack, I like it. I like the idea, but it is tough. Right? And so that's why we don't see it being deployed. I don't know of, outside of my universities that have research grants and grad students that work for pennies on the dollar, I don't see anybody deploying this because it's tough to do. But the benefit to the organization often outweighs the cost. And so OpenStack is fascinating. And the reason I say it's fascinating is because what we're doing at Cisco is taking, okay, we got servers. We took care of the server part. We just took care of the network part. Now we've got the software part. We're going to take OpenStack, we deploy it on Cisco servers, but we manage it. It's a managed service. I'm not here to sell you OpenStack. I want you to understand why and how we're making it easy for people to consume. I'm going to show you how this works inside Cisco when we get done here. It's 10 seconds to provision a VM, or what they call an instance, right? And so I can draw, and I'll show you as we build that out. OpenStack, I take, and I've got a picture of what it looks like, but it's basically an infrastructure as a service stack. It is OpenStack. You never touch all those modules I just told you about. It builds a tunnel back to a NOC that's actually, I think it's in Los Angeles today, and it'll be growing further out because this was originally MetaCloud, if anybody knows that name. MetaCloud made a name for themselves by basically Disney, Cox Communications, all these big media guys needed somebody to manage the OpenStack cloud, so they said, fine, here's all the servers, you build it, you upgrade the firmware, you do the patch management, and that's what we're doing. So we're taking that away, and that allows you to set policy and not worry about all that day-to-day stuff. I think you're going to see that not only on cloud provisioning, you're going to see that across the network, across storage, right? It's going to be less and less about the day-to-day configuration. In this situation, it's a managed service that's managing OpenStack for you. We're seeing about 1,000% growth year over year in this product right now. And we just acquired them a year ago, so what can I say, right? I mean, there's only one data point to look at, but we're still seeing tremendous growth. What it's providing, and again, this isn't a sales pitch. I want you to understand what makes this different. You can read down through this, right? But the point being that we're monitoring that for customers. In public sector, here's my question, can you hire more people? And often not. Right? Do the budgets allow you to hire in advanced technologies, right? Often budgets are very cyclical, it's very difficult to adapt. This is giving you the ability to bring something on and be more advanced. It's also something the Cisco partner community is becoming very, very involved in this. You're going to see us getting deeper and deeper. This is what we're calling private cloud. I'll show you in a second how it goes into hybrid cloud as it builds through. Here's a picture. I'm a visual learner, and even more so a hands-on guy. I need to config stuff. So this is actually what it looks like to start off with. When you provision OpenStack and use the private cloud, Cisco's private cloud, that's literally what you're looking at. The storage is there, so you don't have to, in an agile infrastructure, you're not running a normal storage array. I love my EMCs, my NetApps, Hitachis. I'll even say I love my Dell storage, right? But at the end of the day, in this kind of infrastructure, those legacy designs aren't as agile. They're very valuable in a traditional world like we showed before with VMware, with SAP, very, very valuable, right? But in an agile world, we load all the storage into the hard drives on the front of the servers themselves, blend them together using Ceph, right? So if you haven't seen Ceph, C-E-P-H, you should do some research on that. That is becoming very popular in the community because I can do storage for 10 cents on the dollar. This is why I think this is relevant for us in public sector. The costs are about 10 cents on the dollar of anything you've done before. Right? I am cheaper than Amazon with this. I can guarantee that. I'll be about 20 bucks a VM, right, per month. Amazon for the same thing is going to be about 30 to 50 bucks a VM. Now there's a lot of variability there, but any of my cost models, in fact every cost model I've run, I've been cheaper than Amazon on a per VM basis. A stack like this will run 1,000 VMs. Normal, Amazon medium to Amazon small. I use Amazon for my benchmark. And again, as I talk about it, I like Amazon, right? I like what they do. They absolutely have a purpose. In public sector, we often need to keep things internal too, and this is a great way to put Amazon inside your data center with all your security policies that I just outlined on the network, all your firewall policies, everything that blends together with this. But the storage is on the servers. There is no VMware, so there are no VMware costs. It's all the only costs are the hardware and the management. You get full VM capability. I'll show you in a minute. Any questions of what I'm talking about here? This is cutting edge, right? This is absolutely cutting edge. But for us in public sector, it allows us to really get into this web and cloud, basically bleeding edge very safely because you've got it being managed by Cisco, by the guys formerly MetaCloud. It's a very fascinating. We've got probably 3 customers in public sector here in the state that are moving into this right now. Gear's shipping, right? I don't have gear on site yet. If you look across the nation, it's taken off quite fast. And by the way, you look down here, the processors, all that kind of stuff there, that's actually old spec. We oversubscribe our processor 6-to-1 because it turns out most of your VMs don't need a lot of processor power 100% of the time. So that allows me to get substantial amounts of virtual machines, more than you've ever seen in a VMware environment because I don't have a hypervisor. The hypervisor doesn't exist. I think in the back end, there's a couple different ones you can use. We're moving to all Red Hat. Okay, so Red Hat is where we're going to. You know, about cost, you can read down through this. There are actually, you can see the hourly rates at the bottom there, so I'm not just giving you a marketing slide that has no numbers to back it up. But if you ever want me to run it and compare it to what you've already got, the minimum we'll deploy is 10 servers today. We're going to come down market with that. But 10 servers would be 500 VMs, right? 20 servers would be 1,000, right? That's roughly in my mind what I'm looking at. And you assume what's the cost for 10 servers with hard drives, add up just a recurring yearly cost to manage it, done. That's how I get to about 20 bucks a VM per month. If you look at this, the per hour cost, it's tough for Amazon to come down that cheap because we're on-prem. Once again, Amazon, good stuff, but it's interesting to watch is how you can leverage OpenStack to drive your costs down. 2 more slides for you before I actually show this stuff in action. So I talked a bit about ACI, which is our basically a virtualized network. We talked about OpenStack, which is a virtualized private cloud. The problem that we have is, let's say I do put something in Amazon, and I want to bring it back. You can't. I mean, you can. It's not very easy. What if the data's in Amazon? I use Amazon a lot, but what if it's in Azure? I see a lot of my Slate customers moving to Azure. I believe it's because of the ELAs you all have and some of the negotiated agreements with Microsoft, right? They've got a good product. There's a lot of integration. Microsoft and Cisco, with the exception of the voice side, and I can say that because none of my voice guys are here, right? But with the exception of the voice side, Microsoft and Cisco are becoming very good friends. And you'll see us integrating ACI and Hyper-V will actually integrate together so that they're one and the same. So when I provision a policy for security up in my network, it flows right into the hypervisor itself. And that exists today. Right? So Cisco and Microsoft are coming along long ways in our relationship, and you'll continue to see that grow. But if you look, you say, okay, well, if I put stuff out there, how do I move a workload? So today, how it exists today, when you put a workload, it's now static. Even though it's in the cloud, it ain't going anywhere. Remember I talked about a cloud vendor, and you can go through, or a broker, and say, okay, what's it cost for X, Y, and Z? Well, what happens if I deploy to SunGuard, and next month it's 50% cheaper to deploy that workload over in Amazon, and the work after that, it's 25% cheaper to deploy it in Azure. What if I could have my VMs auto-tier and move them around based on the cost to the organization, and I don't really care where they exist? How do I move a virtual machine and all its workload, right? It doesn't exist today. Where Cisco's making investments is in that exact capability. The argument that they love to use, and I think, okay, it's sort of kind of an argument, is that Cisco started by connecting networks together. right? So by connecting networks, we created the quote internet. And so by connecting clouds together, they're going to create the intercloud. So you'll see some terms up here, intercloud. It's actually two things. And here it looks like four, but let me build it out for you. This is a work in progress, right? So first up, what I just showed you, private cloud. In this case, I showed you OpenStack. There's some other ones that are out there that are also very good products. Other vendors that make very good products that I see out there in the market. And don't be afraid to consider, take a look at them all. It's a very, very exciting place in the IT organization or IT industry to be operating in some of these new small clouds. Build up for me here. Well, let's just take it, I'll walk you through this. Partner clouds, you're looking at Cisco Power. Let's just see if this thing builds out for me. This is what I wanted to build you out, sorry. I hate build slides and I love build slides at the same time. So if you look at this, private clouds, that's your choice. On the left side, intercloud partners, that could be an NWN, it could be a Presidio, it could be a DNS, it could be a SunGuard, it could be a Terramark. There's a whole bunch of them out there that have their own internal clouds that they provision some stuff to Quest. I mean, I could go down the list, there's hundreds and hundreds of them. You may have, like voice, infrastructure as a service, Microsoft, DR as a service via those guys. But they'll be linked back to your personal cloud sitting here, OpenStack, right? So if I build a VM there, by this intercloud concept, I'm linking clouds together. It's actually a type of virtual switch that exists inside the clouds and links those two together using secure policies. So if I'm doing this, for lack of a better phrase, take a VPN tunnel, link two clouds together, connect them, and be able to understand the framework on one side, the other translate it, and be able to move workloads between clouds. So now I deploy into SunGuard or whoever, and I want to move that workload back, I can, because I've created a relationship between my personal cloud internal and their cloud. Then you step out and you start looking at public clouds. There's Cisco. Public clouds, I already talked about them. Azure and Amazon already have this capability built in. There are day zero, that's probably the wrong phrase to use, but they are the initial guys that started off using this with us. And as we extend out Intercloud Fabric, which is that fabric of moving workloads, you're going to see them become using that quite a bit. The only catch, I'll give you one catch. You have to build your VMs with the intercloud switch turned on. You can't add an intercloud switch afterwards. And part of that is because I got to understand how they go together. But that's okay, right? This is brand spanking new. You may use this in a greenfield situation as you roll out cloud. And then also, Cisco's going to be moving a lot, almost all of our stuff onto our own internal cloud. If you've heard terms like Nimbus tossed around, Raleigh up here in RTP1 is where a lot of this is going to be hosted. There's quite a bit of stuff, Meraki, WebEx, you got security, you got some HANA as a service, stuff that'll be Cisco-powered cloud or a Cisco cloud. Right, so let's step back and say it again, right? Private clouds, you intercloud partners, you'll be provisioned with them. You have Amazon and Azure and all these other guys out there, and then you have stuff like WebEx you're already a customer of that'll all be inside a cloud inside of Cisco. Lots and lots of clouds. We need to connect them together so they can move workloads around, right? And that's what intercloud does. Intercloud Fabric allows you to take a VM from one, move it to another, move it to another, and in my opinion, the holy grail is I can auto-tier it so that maybe I've got a relationship with 6 different cloud vendors. Every month I take a shot of what are my cost structure, and then I adjust my VMs where they are based on the cost structure that's out there on a monthly basis. I don't want this to turn into like Skynet where my VMs are moving on their own and building themselves out and coding themselves new networks and that kind of stuff, right? But I do see us move into a world where you don't really care. Now, again, us in public sector, we have different requirements, different security requirements, different requirements of law, and so you've got to be able to build around that. And that's why I think private clouds can be bigger for you, and I should say for us. I cover only public sector. Bigger for us than you may see in some of the commercial areas. Questions before I actually show you this stuff in action? Or comments? Are we on time? So we've got 15 minutes, perfect. So I'm going to show you what we do internally. First I'm going to show you MetaCloud, which is OpenStack, and then I'm going to show you how we front end that inside Cisco. So my users, we are not full of a lot of technical. We got technical people, lots of technical people, but you'd be amazed how should I say this politely? Technical people are not always the smartest folks in the room, even though I think they are, right? But being able to use and provision VMs very quickly, and how to make it easy for my users. The joke I say is I want my mom to be able to build out a VM, and I think she can using this system. So let me show you what it is. I'm going to do the danger thing and show you my entire screen. So if email's popping up or any kind of thing, bear with me. So this is, in fact, let me just log out. So this is Meta Cloud. Remember I was telling you this is OpenStack, right? And it's essentially, hey, that's all I got. There you go. So this is our test dev environment. You're going to see some stuff in here you probably shouldn't see, so just forget you saw some of that. The thing I want you to see, though, is the experience. This is going to not be, I mean, you could make it user-facing, but could my mom log into this and provision an instance? No. She would, in fact, I'm pretty confident she can't do that. But the next tool I'll show you, she would be able to. This would be for you. So you may have your ticketing system. Somebody may open a ticket and say, I need a VM, I need it now. Right? This is all the stuff I got to get done. I need it in 5 minutes or in 10 minutes. I mean, I've seen some customers of mine that have an SLA of 2 months to provision a VM. I mean, that's dead man walking, in my opinion. That IT department is just going to get outsourced to AWS and will no longer be around. And by the way, my question too is, if you go 100% Amazon, do you need IT? Maybe, right? But if you go 100% in-source, IT has there's a barrier to being very flexible. So there really is this nice little area that's hybrid. So let me go ahead and log in. And I'm going over my phone, my hotspot, so it's going to be a little slow for what it is. This is OpenStack. This is why I'm telling you OpenStack's hard, but hey, look, OpenStack's actually easy. This is how you would interface with OpenStack. When I go in here, there's no longer this concept of VMs because we don't have a hypervisor. Instead, I can scroll down and create a project. You can see some of these things, onboarding, some energy-wise stuff they're doing. There's a whole bunch of projects. Consider each project like its own different domain. It's also, we deploy these what are called availability zones. So you might have RTP would be an availability zone. Inside the availability zone would be a bunch of these built projects. And inside the projects are where the instances or the VMs reside. Right? And so I'm using storage as local to it, so it's very easy to provision storage. I've got memory, I've got processor, I've got everything I need. Here you have the software. So in my case, I'm defined into a project. So I launch an instance. So let's take a look at what that looks like. My availability zone that I'm tied to is trial 2. We'll just call this test. These are based off, basically I've said, okay, well, I haven't said, they've told me, you have the option of deploying one of these 6. That's it. No custom builds. Actually, I can do a custom build. But I have to go get my senior vice president approval because if it's that important that it has to be custom, I'm confident he'll approve that, right? And you'd be amazed at how that makes everybody get into line as to the exact size that I need. It helps me plan. If I've only got 6 different flavors, I can now budget correctly for what I think my growth is going to be. I don't have to take a wild guess that it's going to be 1,000,000 terabytes of RAM. I know exactly what it's going to be because people are going to pick based off of this. So let's pick an M1 small. You can see how this goes out on my right side. I select my boot source. So they predefine the images for me. So I can put my own in there if I want, but it documents that. Now Cisco says, hey, here's your secure image of Ubuntu, or your secure image, or blah, blah, blah. I can put all different ones. I'll show you them to you, actually. Here's the ones that got loaded in here. And I'll show you some other ones too, but right now for test dev, you don't see a lot of people rolling up Server 2012 just yet, because this was originally designed to handle stuff like very quick, small Linux. Remember I said cattle, right? You want a big herd of cattle running for one application. But we're seeing more and more like Server 2012 show up, some of the other stuff that's out there. So let's just pick Ubuntu. That don't work. I scroll down, I hit launch, and we'll go back to my instances. There we go. So this is my guy right here. And you can see it's spawning, which I don't like that phrase. That worries me whenever my VMs are spawning. But let's go ahead and click on it. Check out the console. I'm impressed. For coming over my cell phone, this is pretty good. Once it's done spawning, come on now, it'll pop in here. It should be, there we go, done. So at this point, Ubuntu's installing, off we go. Right, so if you count it, that's about 10 seconds. So from the time, it's going to take longer for you to read the ticket than it's going to take for you to build the ticket and build the VM and hand it over to your user. So I can deploy this, it's building up. I don't have Server 2012 on this, but Server 2012, same kind of thing happens. All of a sudden, 10 seconds later, it's installing Windows. That's my bottleneck. Windows takes forever to install. But at least I can get to that point where it's spooling up and I got that pretty little Windows logo. I've got an IP address, I can hand it off. Because remember, storage is already done. I just created all a whole storage, for lack of a better phrase, LUN. That's taken care of. All of the configuration is taken care of. Now we're just handing this off. And hey, look, it's all installed. So that's it. Now the other thing I like is that I can go back to my instances. Let's take this guy. guy, I can kill it. So I can, in fact, hey, there we go. We have a limit. With the next tool I'll show you, we have a limit, 30 days, and your instance dies, guaranteed. Right? That allows me to prevent, anybody have servers, applications that are running, you have no idea who's on them, but you're afraid to turn them off because you don't know what's going to happen, right? And you don't know who's going to scream. The argument is just go ahead and pull the power plug and see who screams. Let it sit for a month before you throw it out. It's, in our world with this, and with what I'm about to show you, you've already agreed in 30 days that thing dies, and if it doesn't, you have to re-acknowledge that it goes. And if you're doing bill back, and that's a challenging subject in public sector, do we bill back? And a lot of people in SLED say no. This is a service that we as IT provide to our constituents, or maybe the employees of whatever organization you're a part of. Bill back is a very, very interesting topic. You can, if you want to. What I'm seeing a lot of public sector people do is show back and say, hey, look, this is what you're costing the organization. And often that's enough to reel in wild, crazy applications that somebody's got out there. As you look at, let's step back. So I showed you all the OpenStack. This is the internal portal for Cisco. So once again, you didn't see this because it's actually, we're supposed to keep this all private. But this is a front end. The product name is Cisco Prime Catalog. There's other catalogs out there that people make. There's a lot of good products out there. I like the Cisco flavor, good stuff. Prime Catalog's a good product. But don't be afraid to look at other stuff that's out there too because of what it can do. So I've got OpenStack sitting behind this. I also have VMware sitting behind this. Now, if you're curious about this is where we can do everything. Like if you're getting hired by Cisco, you onboard, you can look at order your phone, order all your stuff through here. I'm going to show you this. The first thing I'll show you, and this is why I find this fascinating, is I can go through, let's order a VM. You know that OpenStack thing that I was just on? So this is tied to my account number. My manager gets a bill, right, when I do this. Now, the interesting thing we did is said, remember I talked about shadow IT? We said, okay, we'll just create this. Everybody in Cisco gets 2 VMs for 30 days. And then at the end of 30 days, they die and you get 2 more VMs for free, no charge. And that basically killed off any kind of spend outside of going to Amazon and that kind of thing. Because you can't be free. It's inside Cisco, everything works fine. So you'll note when I load this on, it's already pulling up my department ID. Because if I want to go beyond 30 days, I just have to extend, boom, I start getting a bill. It's about for us, it's about $69 per VM per month. And I'll show you the pricing structure again, if you forget that you saw it publicly. As I scroll down, I'm going to select my environment. Remember I said OpenStack? Well, this one's running KVM, this version of OpenStack. So I got KVM or ESX. My pricing model changes based on which one I select. But what I'm selecting is very important. So in this case, let's pick ESX. This is the tool I said my mom can provision a VM. Pick my app. These are all pre-built templates if I want to use them. Because this is internal, you're going to see stuff like Jabber. Let's just pick how Word works. Word works. Number of days. I can't go beyond 30. Root password. I mean, I can provision this if you guys want me to, but I really wanted to show this to you. I'm going to pick my piece, hit submit. In about 10 minutes, I'll get an email. And that email will say, here's your IP address, here's your login, off you go, have fun, right? And this is all now inside Cisco. If I go back, let's change my availability zone from ESX to KVM. Notice I'm in Allen, Texas is where it's put me. Now I'm on the OpenStack cluster in Allen. And my V templates are different. They've actually limited it down in this case because it's a different way of development. This is also something we're slowly transitioning to. So we can pick either one we want based on cost structure, based on what I want, how I want to use it. If you're working in internal systems, you see more and more of this stuff here. And I'll show you what it's costing from the VM perspective. So if I come down here, this is where I can build out, provision an entire data center in about 15 minutes. And so if I want that, I'm not going to provision this, and I'll show you why. If you look at that pricing, that's what we charge our internal business units per month. So if I want to build out an entire data center, if I want to build a large one, I can click on that right now, and my manager would get a bill for $17,000. And I'd probably also get terminated, but it would be fun while it lasted, right? But if I actually have a need, that's what we're charging. If I manage, that means you get full tax support. Server 2012's got an error, I've got a memory buffer overflow, whatever it is, I just call them and they'll take care of it. Self-managed, which is half the cost, means I don't have to involve IT. You're on your own. So a couple things to note here. right? First, as IT, you always have to provide a managed service. Public sector, I think we feel this compelling thing we have to say, no matter what you run, I'll support it. Maybe not. Maybe you just say, here's your sandbox. It can even go public. Your problem if this application goes down. That's one way to reduce costs. Two, I'm making sure that people actually use what they're paying for, or showing them what they use, right? And then I have the option to rapidly provision and deprovision based on blocks, right? And so the question I have is, what does a micro block include? So $345, what do I get for a micro block? Essentially this, right? So that's 5 VMs, and you can read down exactly what each VM has. If you do the math on that, and I was doing this last night because I was trying to figure it out, it's around $68 to $69 per VM per month. Now that's ESX. I don't have the pricing directly like in a nice format like this when I move to OpenStack, but you can expect that to be about half what we charge internally. Now I realize that Cisco is not exactly a public sector entity, but how we operate, you can too. This isn't hard to do, right? So what I wanted to show you today was a couple things, right? The first thing was, where do we see cloud going? Where are we putting our investment? We're doing a lot of investment in connecting clouds together and virtualizing anything in the company that can possibly be virtualized. I mean anything, from hardware to software, it's all being virtualized. I wanted to show you the switching ACI, right? Just walk you through what that looks like and some of the things you can do with it. That's a whole long conversation in itself. I wanted to show you OpenStack, where we head with OpenStack and private clouds. A little touch on intercloud and how we're linking fabrics together. And I wanted to actually show you the stuff that we do internally and how we operate using those same technologies. It's very cost effective for you to do that too. Do you have any questions based on what I've shown you? Or comments? Silence usually says no to me. Was this a good use of your time? Okay, my email is jones@cisco.com. You can reach out to me anytime you want. Send me an email. I'll get back to you. If I don't have the answer, there's a lot of smart people in Raleigh that do. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. If you want my card, do I have my card here? I've got cards up front, but just remember jones@cisco.com, and we're here to help. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks.